Hello and welcome to the first episode of PLAYCast from the team behind JumpCut Play and the award-winning JumpCut Online. Today we're talking about lockdown gaming, and to do that with me I have Rhys.
Hello.
And Corey.
Hello.
How are we both doing?
Alright, mate. I'm doing good.
I'm very well, cheers, mate. I'm very
Glad
warm.
to hear it.
It's humid AF here today.
Yeah.
It is. I was very
sweating
sad when I had
buckets.
to turn off my fan before recording. I was really sad.
I've shut a window and I'm like, this is a bad move.
Yeah, it's warm, but it's pissing down outside. So.
But yeah, before we get into today's topic, lockdown gaming, I thought I would start with something related to, I'm guessing, what might be one of our choices that we talk about later, and that is Warzone. Now, one of the big things that's come out this week is that going forward after Season 5, there is going to be more content, but it's not necessarily going to be Modern Warfare. They're going to try and link it into like the newer Call of Duty games and kind of use it as like a marketing tool. So I just wondered what you guys thought about that.
As long as Warzone is still there, and it has that longevity, because we've been playing it like mad over lockdown, so I'd like to see that continue really. But as long as they're adding new stuff, I'm happy. I don't mind which way they kind of mask it.
As someone who only plays Warzone, who has not paid for the actual game of Call of Duty,
Cheapskate.
I hope it stays free. And like Corey said, I hope they add new content as well as like a new map. Like not just changing Verdansk as it is. I want to see a whole new map to get used to, you know? Because I think Verdansk is actually a quite well designed map, and I like the new updates we've done to the last few days with Stadium and stuff. But I think it's always nice to refresh the entire area every so often, just to kind of keep the player base happy and keep them, wanting to try, explore new areas and discover new tactics and stuff. So yeah, I'm happy with the fact that Warzone's going to stay with COD because it's been very, very successful. I just hope it stays free and it just freshens itself up a bit with the next big update, whenever that may be.
Yeah, I mean, I think my main concern is, with it obviously launching with Modern Warfare, going forward, are they going to kind of change the entire aesthetic and the kind of play style of the game to suit the title that comes out? Because if the rumours are a bit believed that the new Call of Duty is set in the Cold War, are we going to have an entire new revamp with new weapons and everything? Because I think everybody at the moment's pretty accustomed to how the Modern Warfare engine plays.
I think as long as it's kind of boots on the floor, I think it'll be fine. I think as long as you can't like jetpack up buildings and all that crazy shit that they've kind of gone for the last, previously, I think as long as they keep the boots on the floor, I think whatever they do with it, Cold War, it'll be fine.
I think as long as it keeps, the same kind of gun types, because obviously Cold War is my history knowledge is awful, but I think that was like, what, 60s, 70s, 80s era, is that it? Am I wrong?
Yes, 80s, I think.
Yeah, so I think the guns will be less modern to kind of keep with the aesthetic of the game. But then, like you said, Sam, it'd be different. It'd be interesting to see what it plays like, because I actually owned Black Ops 4 and I played Blackout a lot, and I really enjoyed Blackout, but I know you didn't, because it played differently to the regular COD games. And Warzone definitely plays smoother than Blackout did. So I think maybe they took kind of what they learned from Blackout and improved it with Warzone, but then wasn't it a different company that made Blackout anyway? Wasn't that
Yeah, so Black Ops 4 was Treyarch, and Infinity Ward is who've done Modern Warfare, so they're the original Call of Duty developers. But you bring up a good point actually mentioning Blackout, because I was going to ask you what you actually see different between coming from Blackout to Warzone, and how they've maybe improved it and maybe what's not improved between them as well.
I was one of the people that I quite liked the fact that you had to find the gun modifications around the map. It made the gameplay a bit more interesting, because some people just have better sights, better ammunition, magazines or whatever. So I think Warzone did kind of make it a bit more even on that front, but I did like experimenting, and then I always had my favorite mods that I could add to my guns, and I was like, I found this site or whatever, which is always quite fun. And that comes as well from how much I love things like Apex Legends, that has the same kind of gun mod style of as you progress through the map. But I think Warzone did streamline it, and like I said, I think Warzone runs smoother and plays smoother than Blackout did. Even though it's basically fundamentally the same game. But I found Warzone to be more enjoyable to play with your friends than Blackout was. And I think it just generally does feel nicer to shoot things, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Did you have Black Ops 4, Corey?
No, I stopped playing Call of Duty after Advanced Warfare. I just never got back into it. And then they released World War II, and I played the campaign for that, but I never did any multiplayer or anything. I was just kind of excited just to play a kind of World War II single-player narrative. But it wasn't until this Modern Warfare that I kind of got back into Call of Duty. Again, it's the campaign, but also the online has been brilliant, I think. The multiplayer, the customization of the weapons, there's a lot of density to having control over your characters and all that sort of stuff. So, and especially when Warzone first dropped, I wasn't fussed because I didn't really get into the hype of Fortnite or other Battle Royale games. So I was just like, nah, I'll just carry on playing multiplayer. I'll go back to story mode. But it wasn't until you guys started playing Warzone and I was watching your videos on Twitter and stuff, I thought, I'll give this a go. It looks quite fun, actually. And I haven't looked back since, really.
Do you think it's the fact that, because I played COD 4, like when that came out on like the 360, do you think the fact that it was like a game that you knew, but it was also new at the same time, do you think that affected how popular this game was?
Yeah, I think I played Modern Warfare, I played Modern Warfare 2, Modern Warfare 3. They were like, massive in my growing up as a kid, even though I wasn't 18 and whatever. But it was like an event thing. You come home from school with all your mates, you jump on COD, and you play until the early hours, until your mother's telling you to shut up, go to bed. And I think because it's a kind of remaster or reboot of that series, I was drawn more to coming back to Modern Warfare.
Yeah.
And even though it's quite different, I'd still think that boots in the ground kind of like modern warfare. I just that's my shit. Like that's when I get really invested in.
I think me and you, Corey, have had like a similar kind of journey with the Call of Duty games because I really liked most of them. Like COD 4 is my favourite, but I really liked most of them up until about Black Ops 2. And then when it started going for the kind of more futuristic settings and going for more like a Halo kind of play style in some aspects, I kind of fell out of it. And then World War II came out, and I did the opposite to you. I did the multiplayer, but I never did the campaign.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I found the multiplayer to be a bit of a return to form.
Yeah.
But I don't think the game was that strong enough that I wanted to play all the time, so I ended up trading it in. And then I don't think there were another one between that and Modern Warfare, was there? I don't think there was. But when they announced they were going back to Modern Warfare, I think that like really ignited the flames again for Call of Duty. But with Warzone as well, I think away from just them adding content to it in that kind of view, it's got more longevity because they'll be able to bring it to the PS5 as well.
I'd be curious to see how the PS5 will affect it, because they definitely experimented with 200 players on the PS4, and the games were too long, but I also think as well that the actual game couldn't handle that many players. Like, it didn't feel as enjoyable to play it with that many, whereas on the PS5, because the machine will run smoother, it might be able to handle better things, so you'd be able to see further away, and that might impact being able to add more players into it. I don't know. But
the 200 player mode as well, I don't know whether it was just me, but I kind of experienced a lot of lag, a lot of server skips. I just felt like it was pushed at its max and it was struggling, like a car going up a steep hill in fourth gear. It was that, it needed a bit of a helping hand, didn't it? So I'm hoping that the PS5 is going to run much more smooth.
I think with them kind of testing the 200 player game mode as well, I think other than that, they have been using the PS4 version of it as kind of like a tech demo in a way to kind of see what they can do with the engine. So I'm curious to see how the PS5 would do it. I don't know whether that's that intentional, but I'm guessing they are using all these different updates and game modes to see how much they can actually throttle the engine until it breaks, which we've all encountered many times.
I mean, the minute it's going through a bit of a phase now where if you pull out a heartbeat sensor, it will crash for about 5 seconds on you.
Yeah.
Which is always
it's
fun.
so odd. But that brings me on to a good segue into my next topic. Tonight is actually the State of Play event for PlayStation. And apparently they're not going to divulge any price details or anything like that, because I still think they're holding out for Microsoft to kind of bite the bullet and go first with that. But they are going to show some games, so they're going to look at Spider-Man Miles Morales, Ratchet and Clank, and Horizon Forbidden West. Is that the sequel to...
Horizon Zero Dawn.
Yeah, that's the one. I was losing the title then in my mind. But I don't know if they'll show anything else other than that. Are we expecting... Do you guys expect them to show anything else? I'd like to see a bit more Hitman 3 from when I saw that at the big announcement reel they did a couple of weeks ago.
I'd love to see more on Resident Evil Village. Which they released with the first event. Massive Resident Evil fan, always have been. And it looks like it's going to be quite close to a kind of loose remaster of Resident Evil 4, maybe. There's talks that might be the case, but with Chris Redfield coming into the narrative. So I don't know. I'm hoping it'll be a bit more released on that, because, Resident Evil has had a kind of renaissance, really. It lost its way during Resident Evil 5, Resident Evil 6, Resident Evil 7. Well, Resident Evil 7 was okay. But they're coming back now to its roots, back to horror, and the 2 remasters were fantastic. Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3 remasters, so looking forward to Village, and I'm hoping it's going to continue along that form.
I played the Resident Evil 2. They did a one-shot demo where you could literally you played it once, and that's all you could do. And I loved that. That was really fun. But I never play actual game because I'm a bit of a...
I couldn't, honestly, I can't recommend it enough. It's an absolute masterpiece, mate, honestly. The third one has its issues. It's much shorter. I think you can speed run it in an hour and 10 or something ridiculous.
Really?
Yeah, the mental decision to do that. But the second remaster in particular is an absolute masterpiece. It captured the essence of the original so well, and added a modern slant to it. So yeah, definitely give that a go, mate. Definitely.
Was that the one with Mr. X in it?
Yeah, man. Top hat wearing Mr. X just follows you around everywhere. The most terrifying being ever. It's terrible.
You see, I'm an absolute novice when it comes to Resident Evil. I've barely played any of them other than the original on the PlayStation 1 and a bit of Resident Evil 5. So if you had to kind of sell someone on it to kind of get into them, how would you do it?
Oh, God. I think... with survival horror, I don't think there's much out there at the moment that does the genre justice. I think with Resident Evil, I think alongside Silent Hill, they kind of kick-started that genre. And it's, out of the 2 franchises, I think Resident Evil has had the most longevity. It's zombies, it's amazing characters, amazing storylines, betrayals, and, the gameplay in most of them are brilliant. But I'd say avoid 5, avoid 6, but start at the Resident Evil remaster that came out on the GameCube, and I think you can get it on the PS4 and Xbox One as well. It's survival horror at its finest, mate.
So Resident Evil remasters a buy then?
Definitely.
I might have to pick that one up.
Not for me. I'm too scared.
Yeah, I'd love to see you stream it. Just to watch your reactions, man.
We've talked about this before, me and you, Sam, where I've played Alien Isolation.
Oh, don't.
An incredible game. I absolutely loved it. However, I've only played it for about 2 hours because it was so scary that I just couldn't. Yeah, I just couldn't get past it. It was because you know how the alien learns how you play. The first time I saw the alien in the vent, that's when I just turned the game off, and I was like, I'm done. I can't play that game anymore.
I think I've played that game for maybe an hour, too scared to play it. And I don't know whether it's just fear, because I've got in my head that the game knows how I'm going to approach it. It's learning how I'm doing it. Or whether it's kind of me overhyping it, and whether the game is actually that smart. But then I've watched a big breakdown on YouTube. It's okay, it is actually that smart, so maybe I should shut up. But no, I can't handle that game. It's very, very good, and it captures the atmosphere, the films very well, but I'm not man enough to play the game.
I remember I played... they did lots of DLC for it, and I played the Ripley DLC that came out for it, which is a much shorter kind of mission, which is maybe about 2 hours long. And I played at my friend's house, and he gave me his surround sound headphones, and I couldn't sleep for 3 days. It was horrendous.
With that being a PS4 release as well, I was reading the other day something to do with the PS5 controller. You can use the normal DualShock now we have for the PS4, but you can only use it with PS4 games on the PS5.
What?
Which seems a bit complicated to me that they would go out their way to kind of disconnect like the player experience with two controllers.
Is that because the new controller has like different controls on it?
Yeah, it's got like the new is it the haptic feedback and stuff like that. So I don't know whether because the technology behind that isn't compatible. Yeah. I'm not sure, but I mean, you've had like PS2 games on the PS4, and while not all of the kind of functions register with the controller, sometimes like vibration and stuff like that, they're still playable.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So I'm not sure what the decision is there.
I don't really understand the controversy around it personally, just because like if I think back to going from 360 to the Xbox One, you couldn't use your 360 controller with an Xbox One, could you?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I'm pretty sure once I had some friends around and we were playing Modern Warfare 2 on a PS3, and my friend said if you plug in the PS4 controller, it'll work.
Yeah,
really?
I think it needs to be attached via the micro USB.
Right.
Yeah, and then to my surprise, it did actually work.
Oh.
So I'm not sure, again, why they're choosing to kind of disconnect the experience, but then again, it could be like a technical thing.
I think it will be.
I think it is probably down to this new controller. But then I don't really understand what this haptic feedback thing is, because to me, it just sounds like special vibrations, which it's really hard to describe it. It does. But I'm just like, I don't really understand what makes that so special, compared to regular vibrations you get on like Ghost of Tsushima now, for example.
Yeah. I've not really read much up on the controller, to be honest. And I know at the minute most of the info about the console, other than like kind of the handful of titles that we know about, has been about the controller. To me, I'm not that keen about knowing about that. I want to know the actual kind of meat and gravy of the console.
Yeah.
But that's just me. But tonight with that event, it starts at 9. I'm curious to see how much they'll actually show of the games they've got and how much of a completed state they'll be in, because Spider-Man's supposed to be one of the first titles, isn't it? It comes out in November.
Yeah, it comes out
I'm
soon.
looking forward to that, man.
Me too.
It's going to be killer.
I'm hoping, because I remember when they announced it at the first State of Play a few months ago, all the footage of Spider-Man was just cinematics. So I'm hoping we'll see some actual PS5 gameplay. But then I just have my concerns, because this is kind of a different argument. However, I'm not convinced that the jump from PS4 to PlayStation 5 is going to be as big as it was from PS3 to PS4. So I think if they show us gameplay for Spider-Man tonight to show like how cool it looks when he's swinging through the city, it might not look substantially different to how it did on the PS4, because the Spider-Man PS4 graphics are incredible anyway.
Are they using the PS4, like the other Spider-Man game, as a kind of benchmark for this one? I don't think they're updating much of the graphics, are they? Or that's just an extension to that game? I don't think it's a new game in its entirety.
No, well, that was part of the whole argument around what Miles Morales is. And I have heard that it is its own game, and they're adding in the Spider-Man PS4 game as like an extra free thing on the disc as well.
Right, okay.
So it is going to be its own story. However, I don't think it'll be as long as the Spider-Man PS4 game was.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of kind of comparisons to it being like Uncharted: The Lost Legacy.
Yeah, I've seen that.
So it's its own entity, but I don't think it'll be the kind of like 30+ hour campaign that you had on Spider-Man, or even less than that, depending on how much you played it.
If it's a shorter game, I hope that they're not going to charge you full price, because they did that with Resident Evil 3 just gone. They charged 50 quid for it, and it's a much shorter game, just like half the duration of Resident Evil 2. So I'm hoping that the price will reflect that, but I think that's quite optimistic.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a 60 quid game, I think. No, maybe
I think
50.
it would be as well.
But only because if the actual game is not that long, they do have the added bonus of, we've actually got the full Spider-Man game on there as well. So you're paying for 2 games in 50 quid.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough.
I'm just hoping they kind of take a bit of like a page from their own book, actually, Insomniac, because the DLC for Spider-Man, you could buy all 3 packs at one point for £15, and I think they were 8 quid on their own, and they're at least 2 or 3 hours more of story in each of them. So I'm hoping they kind of take a page from that, and like Corey says, don't charge full price for it. wasn't Resident Evil 3, like, I've seen some people speed play it in like about 3 or 4 hours, or even less than that.
Resident Evil 3, I speed ran it in about 1 hour 20.
Christ.
Yeah, it's
Oh my god.
it's very short. Like the first time you play it, you're trying to soak in all the details. It's a very fun experience. Probably take you about 3 hours.
Right.
Is that it?
Yeah, it's very short.
Because I think I've been warped by the games I've been playing recently, because I used to be a person that does not like long games. I like to kind of in and out, quick and dirty kind of thing. But then I've played things like Death Stranding, Red Dead 2, Spider-Man was long. You've got Last of Us 2 was well long, Tsushima's well long, The Witcher 3 is well long. So I'm like, I think those games have kind of warped my perception of how long a game should be. But 3 hours is short for a game.
Yeah, I just looked it up now. The world record for the speed run of Resident Evil 3 was 40 minutes.
Oh my god.
That's less than £1 a minute.
Yeah, they charged you 50 quid for that.
Is
I
that
paid
like
50 quid.
a legitimate playthrough? There's no like kind of like
No,
level glitching. That's a legitimate play.
Literally linear from start to finish.
My god.
Yeah,
God.
it had a lot of complaints from me as well, but mad.
Bloody hell. Well, just wrapping up on the state of play. It's an odd one. I'm optimistic for it, but how much are they actually going to show us? Because it seems like more than ever in kind of the waves of generations that we've got with consoles, they're really, really holding out on each other until like the last minute to give all their info on either console.
I think considering the Xbox showcase the other month, I think they could show anything and they'll be fine. Because I think Sony have got it on lock this year with the next generation console. Honestly, I've spoken to people who have like die-hard Xbox fanatics, and they are saying I might make the leap to PS5 this time.
The only thing I think that will help Xbox is that they recently bought loads of different game studios. So I think they might start this next gen slower, but they might then kind of improve as it goes along. Whereas I think PS5 will start much stronger.
Yeah. Well, there's rumours that Microsoft are trying to buy the rights for the Arkham series.
I hate that.
That's a topic for another day, because I could rant about that for
I'll be
a long time.
gutted. I'll be gutted.
So much.
Oh, piss off, no. That's
Well,
one
but then, at the same time, though, you could argue that the Xbox people were disappointed about Spider-Man being a PS4 game. So it's the same thing going backwards.
Spider-Man, Last of Us, you know.
I think it's just because I've personally always had a Sony console, so maybe I'm a bit spoilt because I've had both the pleasure of playing Spider-Man and Batman as well. So
Me too, actually,
not having an Xbox, I wouldn't really see it that way. Like, oh, I've just got Batman. I guess I'll just have to play Spider-Man 2 on PS2 then.
Yeah.
Today's topic of the podcast, I thought, with this being the first episode, rather than just kind of deep diving on one specific game, I know over the past few months more than ever, I think all of us have played probably more games than maybe in the last 5 years.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Just because of the circumstances we've all been in. So I just wanted to kind of start. What have we all been playing? Who wants to take that one?
Corey, you go first.
Yeah, okay. So obviously we talked about at the start, Warzone has been a massive part of our experience of lockdown. I only started playing it at the start of lockdown with you guys, and I've loved every evening that we've played it. But outside of that, I've been going back to replay The Last of Us, ready for The Last of Us 2, which I'm currently playing. But I think the trend that I'm having at the minute, I'm playing a lot of narrative games. So I used to play a lot of games, like online sports games and that sort of thing, just to kill the time now and then. But I think, coming from a film background that we all have, I think narrative games are what has given me the most escapism. So, The Last of Us is probably one of the best narrative games, of our generation. So I've been hooked on that. I've been hooked on playing the Batman games again, the Arkham games, Red Dead 2, just anything like that, really.
Remember you said that you were actually a fan of Arkham City when you replayed it, which to me was just like blasphemy.
Yeah, so I replayed Arkham Asylum, and I thought, yeah, this is brilliant. Like collecting all the Riddler trophies and doing all the riddles and stuff.
Mm.
And then I go in there into City. I don't know. I felt it was a bit overwhelming. Like going from Arkham Asylum, where you're kind of confined to the grounds of the asylum, and you know the little rooms that they got there, and then go into like, look, now you have Arkham City, and it's just like, I don't know. I felt as if I wanted to scale back a bit. I don't know what it was. I just felt as if I was kind of overwhelmed by everything, and it wasn't as I wasn't as fond of it as I was when I played it for the first time. But then I played Arkham Knight again, and I loved that more than I did the first time I played that. So I don't know. It's a weird experience for me.
I loved Arkham Knight when I played it. I've not played it since. I think because it was the free game on PS Plus like a good 6 months ago or something, and I started that again, and I just forgot how good that game is.
Yeah, so did I.
So
did
good.
I think there's it relies way too much on the Batmobile. It has its problems, but given Scarecrow more of a dark persona than it was in Asylum, I think it was a much more broody kind of experience. I think the whole enigma of who is the Arkham Knight, even though some people saw it coming, I know Sam probably did. For people like me who didn't read the comics or anything like that, I was like, oh my god, this is like, I was fully engrossed in the story. I think playing it the second time, even though you know who he is, and I'm not going to spoil it for anyone, you still have that like fun and that investment in it. So Arkham Knight, I was really surprised how much I liked that again.
The thing with the Arkham Knight kind of twist again, which we won't spoil, it's just that before the game came out, they said the Arkham Knight was a new character that they'd made fresh. So when I got to that point where they revealed who he was in the game, I was like, really?
That's cheap. Yeah.
So I don't know. I've gone back to Arkham Knight, like Rhys says as well, and I'm not that like hot on it anymore, if I'm honest with you. I think the actual story itself, like minus the kind of Arkham Knight kind of reveal, is really good, and like you said, the Scarecrow aspect of it is the strongest part, and especially the kind of evolution of using the Joker as part of Batman's psyche as well.
And that's why I love that. So even though he's like dead and he's gone, he is still very much alive in Batman's mind, and how that affects some of his decision making, and that was such a genius move to keep the Joker alive in that respect.
Yeah.
I think they integrated that really well into the actual gameplay as well, because there's like little minute moments that you might miss where you'll walk around the environment and like a billboard in the background will have the Joker on it, and you'll think about it for a second saying, wait, what? And then you'll turn the camera back to it and it'll have gone.
Yeah, little moments like that.
They're kind of playing with you like that, and I really enjoyed that aspect. I think it is one of the best kind of representations of how the Joker's always manifested himself inside of Batman's mind. But I'm sad because my favourite Arkham game isn't actually available on PS4 to play.
Is that Origins?
It is.
Yeah, I played it at the start. Is that the one with Ra's al Ghul? Is it that one?
It's Black Mask, isn't it?
Yeah, Black Mask and Deathstroke.
Ra's al Ghul is Arkham City, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
I liked Origins because it had a boss fight kind of system, and then when I came to playing Ghost of Tsushima, the duel system on that is very similar to it.
It is.
So I really enjoy that. And the atmosphere as well in Arkham Origins, I've always kind of preferred. It's got more of like a Tim Burton-y kind of vibe to it. I think the problem with that game is in comparison to Arkham Knight, where you can always fly around and beat the shit out of people. In Arkham Origins, once you've kind of beaten everybody up, there's nobody left.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a very empty world.
So it doesn't really have much replayability about it. It's just very much once it's finished.
The story's great, and it's got great mechanics introduced, but in comparison to Arkham Knight, which one I did, it was the first game I bought for the PS4, and when I finished it, I just used to drive around the Batmobile all the time.
Yeah.
And it helped because it had a Ben Affleck skin as well, so that was obviously
that's
for me to come back to it.
I came back to it, and it had the Batfleck skin, it had the Dark Knight skin, I was like, oh my god. I was just like, this is amazing.
Unreal.
I remember I played Arkham Origins as well, but then I played that only once because I do remember that game had a really bad launch on the PC.
Yeah, it was horrendous.
It had like shocking like glitches on there. But I remember my issue with Arkham Origins is that it didn't feel like Arkham City did in terms of the gameplay. It just didn't feel as like kind of like tight as it used to because it was a different company that made it, wasn't it? It was Warner Brothers Montreal, I think, rather
yeah,
than
it was, yeah.
Rocksteady or whatever.
Yeah, Rocksteady.
Yeah, they took the development duties off of Rocksteady so they could kind of crack on with Arkham Knight.
But I remember as well, one of my big things with it was that I love Mark Hamill as the Joker.
Oh,
Yeah.
So hearing Troy Baker do like a Mark Hamill impression for the Joker was like not as satisfying for me as Mark Hamill, because Mark Hamill's Joker is like the quintessential
it's
Joker
legendary.
voice.
It's legendary. Yeah.
The Last of Us as well. Again, you're gonna hate me, Corey, but I'm not that hard on it.
What?
I know.
I think it's a perfectly fine game.
Oh, mate, you're underselling it. I'm so close to telling you to get fucked.
I mean, look, I've got it as one of the free games on PS Plus. I've got it on my account, so I might re-download it and revisit it. But I did play it when it came out, and I thought it was fine.
I hate you so much.
That was one of those games that I got that early in my PS4 kind of life, because I got the PS4 later than like release, and maybe like a year or two after it. So
Yeah,
Last of Us
me too.
Remastered was already out, so I think my friends were like, "You've got to play Last of Us." So I downloaded it, I think after I finished Arkham Knight, and I was just in love with it.
Yeah.
Like, as a game in terms of like storytelling, acting, performances, gameplay, like it was amazing. I know I've never really understood. There's been a lot of discussion around Last of Us and how like you don't like have much of an agency in the game because you're just kind of controlling these two characters on like a journey. But I'm like, yeah, but when the journey's that good, I don't care. As long as the gameplay itself is satisfying, where I am shooting headshots and all that kind of stuff, I'm like, yeah, that's what I really love to do. You know, so yeah, Last of Us and Last of Us 2, which I won't spoil because Corey is playing it, but I adored Last of Us 2. I absolutely loved it.
I think the reason I love The Last of Us so much is going back to my kind of roots with survival horror, you know, and keeping care of your resources, backtracking sometimes, making sure that you have enough resources at your disposal to defeat certain enemies in certain parts of the looting, that sort of thing. I just love that kind of. I get so immersed in it. You're going around picking up like half a scissor, and you're like, shit, yeah, I got a scissor, you know. It just means so much. And I think with the second one, I'm only like maybe not even a quarter way through it, I don't think. But they've added so much to the mechanics of that game, and I am all the way in. I'm absolutely loving it.
It's really good. And I think it's one of those. The second one as well. It plays differently than the first one because I don't think it's as horror-ish as the first game was, because the enemy types are all different. However, you will still have the same thing. Like, you'll meet some enemies, mainly the zombies or the infected, and one of them will just rock your shit so hard that for the rest of the game, you will always have Molotov on you just in case. You know? It's that kind of thing. It's so frustrating, but you just always have to have some sort of fire-based weapon with you at all times.
So you've just completed that recently, haven't you, Rhys?
I have.
A couple of weeks ago. Other than that, what else have you been playing? I know The Last of Us was one of your big kind of anticipated releases in lockdown, because I remember as soon as it started lockdown, I just remember you like, it's okay, there's only a couple more weeks to The Last of Us. Then it got pushed back again. And you're like, no, it's okay, there's only a couple more days to The Last of Us.
Honestly, yeah, me and my mate from work, we were both like obsessed with Last of Us for years, and then so when we knew Part 2 was coming out, we both pre-ordered it, and we were just waiting and waiting and waiting. And I remember on the day that it came out, his copy arrived hours before mine did, so he was way into the game before I'd even started it, and I was just so jealous.
Bastard.
Yeah. But in terms of what I've been playing, so I've been playing, like Corey said, lots of Warzone with you lot, and it's been amazing. But my lockdown started with The Witcher 3.
Which I haven't played that.
It's really good. It's just, again, it's much older than the average kind of next gen game. It came out in like 2013 or something. And I started it months ago, I think in like December of last year. And that was before I got into my longer games like Red Dead 2 and stuff, because when I started Witcher 3, I was just so overwhelmed with what I had to do. And like the map and the world is so massive in Witcher that I was just like, I just don't know where to even begin. But then lockdown started, and I just had all this free time to just kind of sink into the game. And then now I'm 75 hours into it, and I've still not finished it.
My God.
Honestly, it's the longest game I've ever played in my entire life, and I've loved every second of it.
I was so close. Yeah, I was so close to buying it, and then I watched some of the gameplay, and I was like, "That looks really outdated."
It is, yeah, it is a bit old school. However, the sword stuff is really satisfying, and the way you kind of mix it in with magic, with potions and spells and stuff, is way more in depth than I think I even realized. Like, I didn't realize until probably hour 60 how useful things like potions and oils work. So you can like add oils onto your sword to make your sword work better against certain enemies, and that just like changed my entire kind of approach to fights and battles and stuff. But then I've also, so apart from Witcher 3, when I've not finished it, I'm going to go back to it at some point. I've also been playing Ghost of Tsushima, which I mean, Sam.
Here we go. Here we go.
We've been talking about it for ages. And I'm not going to talk about it that much because, as a little plug, when you hear this episode, I have my JumpCut Play review of Tsushima on the website. And it is a game that I honestly loved. I have some flaws with it. It's not a perfect game by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a game that kind of hooked me in so well and so quickly that I just had to basically just fall in love with it. It was just one of those games that instantly grabbed me because it feels like lots of things like Shadow of Mordor and Assassin's Creed, the good ones, and it's just got such a good vibe to it, and the world is so well designed, and it's just really easy to pick up and play. You haven't got to kind of commit to hours of it like that to Last of Us 2. It's much more casual to go into, but even then the gameplay is really satisfying, and the combat and the kills are really good, and it's the music and the setting and the black and white mode and the photo mode. It's such a good game to have sunk the last 2 or 3 weeks of my life to. And it arrived at the end of the school year as well, so it was like the perfect time to kind of dive into a whole new game. But yeah, that's been a great highlight of lockdown, was the Ghost of Tsushima for me.
I never heard of it. Like, honestly, like, I didn't really hear of it in any way, shape, or form throughout the build-up of it. But when you guys started playing, and I remember Sam was saying, "Oh, it has this beautiful black and white mode. You know, you're a samurai." I thought, "Oh, like Kurosawa," and he was like, "Yeah, it's called Kurosawa mode." I was like, "Oh my god, I need this."
Honestly, it's really good. I remember I turned it on really early in the game because I heard about how it kind of works and stuff, and then I just happened to have it on when I played my first duel in the whole game, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is epic!" Like, it just looked so cool. But I was like you in that I knew it was coming out, and I watched some like videos about it, but I was not convinced by it until the reviews dropped for it, because I watched them play some kind of gameplay, and it felt like a pale imitation of games like Shadow of the Colossus and stuff. Like, it had the same kind of like horse vibe, and but I just wasn't convinced. And the reviews came out and they were all really positive, so I thought, school's finished, I've got nothing else to do, I'll just pre-order it. And it's been one of the best investments I've made, considering it was, probably the best one I've made since Death Stranding, which was also equally a surprise at how good it was. But yeah, if you want to pick it up, Corey, you should.
Yeah, I know, I will. Promise.
It's funny that you mentioned Death Stranding, actually, because the games I've been playing, I've not really played that many. There's only about maybe 2 or 3 games I've played, and obviously one of them's Warzone, like we've said. Death Stranding, and maybe Dark Souls, which I revisited a little bit as well.
Oh god.
Are the games I've played over lockdown. And Death Stranding, like you've said, it's such a long journey, but I think it hit more for me because we're all inside, and the world of Death Stranding is so eerily similar to everything that's going on right now.
It is weird.
It's so odd, and I felt like a really personal connection with everything, like decision I made, every kind of parcel that I had to deliver. I was like prioritizing different missions, like this guy needs this medicine, so I'm going to go to him. fuck the film director who wants his action figures, I'm going to go deliver this medicine. Death Stranding's been an absolute experience, and ever since playing it, I've just I can't stop thinking about it. It's a hard game to sell on to someone. It's such a difficult sell.
Yeah, that's my issue, because I was looking into it. I know money's a bit tight lately, and I'm just thinking, I'm gonna get a game. And so I looked at Death Stranding, and I just thought, I just don't want to be a glorified post office, postman for 76 hours of my life. Do you know what I mean? I was just a bit like, nah, that's not really for me.
The thing is, I can't even say that you're wrong in saying that, 'cause in a way you are. But the kind of big thing about the game that really sold it for me is it doesn't have like a traditional multiplayer, but it has like a system where every kind of structure that you build is represented in other players' worlds. So I may have at one point, without even knowing, used a structure that Rhys had put somewhere in the game. It's probably like a 1 in a million chance, but there is a chance that I've probably used the zip line he's put up to make the game easier.
I've made zip lines everywhere. You probably did. Honestly.
The biggest like region I did the zip lines was when you finally get to like where Heartman lives and the paleontologist. That mountain region, because that was absolute hell to navigate.
And it was like you had to have like certain exosuits to help you climb mountains and stuff. And I just remember having to sacrifice different kind of objects, but I can't carry this now because I just can't get over this damn mountain. But then, like, just say how kind of addictive it is. I was telling Sam the other day that I was watching one of my favourite streamers on Twitch, and he was playing Death Stranding, and he wasn't even doing any missions in the game. He wasn't delivering any packages. He was literally wandering around the mountains, building a zipline track to take him from point A to point B in like the most efficient way possible. And I was watching a man walking for 2 hours, and I was hooked on it. Like, I was honestly...
The Walking Dead.
Yeah, it was just like, I was completely enthralled, even though I've played the whole game. Like, I know how the story goes and stuff, but I was still hooked on it. And that was a game that I spent the full 50 quid on it when it came out. And
Me too, yeah.
I bought it as a complete shot in the dark because I'd never played a Kojima game before, never played a Metal Gear Solid or anything. I'd thought, this is the biggest investment to like risk reward in my entire life, and thank God I loved it. But then just to kind of I've talked a lot for a second, but to kind of show you how difficult it is to sell, I sent the game for free to JumpCut's editor-in-chief Tom Sheffield, and it's been returned to me today, and he's barely played it. So yeah, I've got it in a package on my sofa right now.
Tom,
I know.
I don't expect nothing less from Tom. He's an absolute fucking nuisance.
Yeah. So like the fact that so I gave it to someone for free and he couldn't play it tells you how difficult that game is to sell.
Rhys, fire it my way, mate. I make sure it gets played.
Mate, I will, pal. Because I've got no use for it. You can have it. I will send it your way.
It got to the point where I had such like an odd connection with a game where, with the structures other people had built, I would feel guilty if I deleted somebody else's structure out of the game. Like, I really needed like the bandwidth to make my own, like, I don't know, like a post box or a generator for the bike.
No way! No way does this game exist, man. Post box.
You can make a post box, yeah, where obviously you can like put the packages in you're delivering, or you can leave those packages behind and either send a bot, like a robot, to go and do it for you, or you can leave it for other players to pick up.
Yeah,
you can't leave suspicious packages laying around. So.
But it was really nice though, because you would put it in a post box, and then you like literally probably 3 days later you get, oh, Johnny Boy 69 has delivered your package for you. I'm like, oh, Johnny, mate, cheers for that.
What a guy! What a guy!
And that's like another like beautiful part of the multiplayer engine as well, is the like system.
Oh yeah.
It felt so like immense, like when you built a new part of like the road so you could take the vehicles on, and it would come up like the next time you load up the game, oh, you've now received 10,000 likes from other players, and it's like, how the hell have 10,000 other people in the world played the game at the same time and like, yeah, I'm gonna like this guy's road, thank you, dude.
I know.
It's like sending love on Bebo.
It literally is. Like, even then, you say it, you laugh at that. However, you can in like the friends list, because there's no like, you can't really connect with your PS4 players directly. You're linked with like a random server basically all the time. So you've got a list of everybody you've kind of come into contact with, but you can like favorite players on that list.
Yeah, I did that.
So yeah, because I remember that there was a few players that I kept seeing, and I was like, this guy's made a great bridge over there. He's got some good ladders around the right place. I'm like, this guy, he's a favourite. I'm going to put him so I can see more of his stuff. So you did kind of have a Bebo top 8, like, on your friends list in Death Stranding. It was incredible.
Was Johnny Boy 69 at the top of that list?
Oh, obviously, mate. Loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Good old boy, Johnny.
Again, like, listening to you sell that kind of system must sound so boring.
Do you know what? I am in. I am sold.
He built a post box. What kind of game is this?
It's like, honestly, it's like you've got to build stuff like generators to help like keep yourself walking. Like, it's not, what they're used for is that your exosuit needs power to work, so you've got to build a battery pack to charge up your own legs. Like, that's the kind of game it is. But I love it. It's wicked.
I can't believe we've not even like got Corey onto one of the other parts of the gameplay as well. I mean, we haven't even touched the story, which is just insane in
Bonkers,
itself.
Yeah.
but we haven't even touched on BB.
Oh, the baby of dreams.
What?
So Corey, there's these things in the game.
Good luck, Sam.
Okay, bit of Death Stranding for you.
Okay, let's go.
There's these like kind of ghost entities called beached things, or BTs for short.
Okay.
And what they are kind of like people that have passed away during the event called the Death Stranding, which is kind of like it's similar to like a nuke in a way. It's hard to describe.
It's an apocalyptic event, basically.
Yeah, so it's like an apocalyptic event. People have passed away, and their kind of beings have turned into these things called BTs. But if you're a human, you can't see them. But some people can sense them. So this little baby thing that you have called BB can activate like a little sensor that pops up in your arm and tells you where they are.
So basically, it's Haley Joel Osment in The Sixth Sense.
Yes.
You can see dead things.
Yes.
But what's even like great about it is that you kind of get to care for the baby the more you spend time playing the game, and there's even a mechanic where if the baby cries, you have to stop and rock the baby.
I ain't got time for this shit, boys. I'm gonna be honest. I'm not rocking a baby, like I'm not.
I mean, you can be a neglectful kind of parent on it and leave it to cry, and it will be quiet eventually.
It's annoying. It cries through the controller on your PS4.
Is there an option to like drop kick it and just?
No,
you can't kick. I was going to spoil the game there. You can't
Welcome
kick
to JumpCast, guys. We talk about drop kicking babies.
Would it make you care for BB more, Corey, if I told you that Guillermo del Toro cares for it as well in the game?
Oh yeah.
And Nicholas Winding Refn helps you as well.
Yeah, boys, I'm in.
And Les Seydoux is your best friend in the game.
Yeah.
Boys, I'm in.
And you're be hunted by Mads Mikkelsen.
I said I was in.
But I don't think we could even touch the story in this podcast, but that in itself is just... I'll put it this way, Corey. There's a character called Die Hard Man.
I know.
and his name... his actual name, I shit you not. Let me just Google him for a second.
I know what it is.
You know what it is. Let me just...
Die Hard Man.
Yeah, what do you reckon Die Hard Man's real name is?
Bruce.
Do you want to know what his name is?
Go on.
John Blake McClane.
Oh, that's the piss stick.
I'm being serious.
I don't believe
John Blake McClane, Die Hard Man.
Yep.
I ain't gonna need that copy, Rhys. I'm gonna need it.
If you want it, mate, I'll send it to you. It's an experience.
And then on the other side, like a learning curve other than kind of the parcel system with Death Stranding, I went back to the original Dark Souls, the remastered version of it, which I've completed twice now. I love it. I love Dark Souls. I know, again, it's a kind of Marmite game where people either pick it up and they hate it because it's so gruelingly difficult as soon as you get into it. But I just love it. I think the way the world in that game is integrated into the gameplay, because there's no actual kind of like cutscenes or anything like that. All the story's kind of told in the environment and how you explore it. And the map is integrated so well. Yeah, it's a great game.
The only thing I heard about that was that it was so hard to play.
Yeah,
the difficulty was
that's the thing though with it, because there's no actual difficulty level. It's down to you. Like, I know it's become a bit of a meme now, but like it is down to you to get good. and that's the great thing about it. It's got this risk reward system where you'll be in a boss fight and you're like, you know what, I'll take that extra hit and it might pay off.
Yeah.
I've never played Dark Souls. I've played Bloodborne for a bit. Never completed it because again it was too hard. But I think people have said that Bloodborne is like an access route into Dark Souls.
See, I wouldn't say that. I thought Bloodborne, in comparison to Dark Souls, was absolutely brutal.
Really?
Yeah. Maybe that's just because I'm shit at the game. But I thought like the learning curve from that in comparison to Dark Souls is way harder.
Mm.
It's got a similar, like the engine is obviously the same and like the play style, but the actual kind of flow of the battles and everything is so much different.
But I remember because I've watched on YouTube, I watched this guy called H Bomber Guy, and he does really good video essays on games and stuff. And he did one about Dark Souls, and he compared it. Oh no, I think he did one on Bloodborne, but as like talk about in comparison to Dark Souls. And he was talking about how in Dark Souls it's much more about a defense kind of game where you've got to kind of preserve your health and dodge and stuff, but take your time to strike. Whereas in Bloodborne, it's much more aggressive. Like, you kind of gain health by doing damage to people, and it's like a whole different risk-reward system compared to Dark Souls. But I think that video I watched, that convinced me by how good that game could be if I was any better at gaming than I actually am. So...
I think, Rhys, I think I'm going to send you Dark Souls.
Mate, I can't play Dark Souls. I'm sorry.
I think I'm going to send it you.
Mate, you've heard me in the gulag, all right? I could not handle Dark Souls.
I would pay to see you stream Dark Souls.
That would be honestly...
Rhys punching his wall.
Yes! I'd have a camera on me, and you would see my kitchen slowly deteriorate behind me.
Like, winning a boss fight on your own in Dark Souls is as satisfying as winning a Warzone match.
Mm.
You feel like you've gone on a 10-hour journey trying to defeat him. It's even more satisfying because it doesn't, again, like Death Stranding, it doesn't have a traditional multiplayer system. You kind of have, there's 2 states of play. When you die, you become undead, and it kind of disconnects you from like the multiplayer kind of aspects of the game.
Mm.
If you kind of absorb the thing called embers, it reactivates them. So every player that you know on your friends list that's been embered, you can like go to a certain point in the game and summon them in, and then you can go to the next boss fight, like part together and fight them.
I've heard that. I think that's a really cool feature.
Because you can even do it like random players. You'll get to like the checkpoint where the boss fight is, and there'll be player signs on the floor, so you can spawn people that are just ready and waiting to come and help you. So there's been many a time where I've got to like a boss that's maybe taken me 2 hours to do, and then somebody's sign will appear randomly, and they'll help me win it. And I'm like, you know what? You just changed my life. I'm gonna tattoo your name on my ass now.
Death Stranding.
Tramp stamp.
I'm not sure I'd be good at it. However, now that I've played Tsushima, I'm convinced to try and get Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, because that's the same people, isn't it?
I really wanted to like that game. I really, really wanted to like that game.
My friend really liked it.
I just found it similar to like Bloodborne, and again, maybe it's just because I'm bad at it. I just couldn't get into it. I thought like the theme of the game, the setting was spot on, but the gameplay wasn't it. And it's funny because Tsushima's got elements similar to Sekiro, like with the grapple hook and stuff like that.
Definitely does, yeah.
But I find the combat in Tsushima to be really, really satisfying.
I agree.
Corey will find out when I send him his Criterion version of Tsushima.
I said this in my review of it. I still find it so crazy how satisfying getting a perfect parry is even now, like 50 hours into the game. Like, if you hit that perfect parry where the player like loses all control and you get a free shot at him, I'm like, it is a beautiful moment to kind of achieve. I love it.
It links me to actually my next question, which Corey kind of broached on earlier with The Last of Us and kind of narrative games. I think with us being in lockdown, have we all been kind of trying to get like a cinematic experience within games instead? Because there's obviously not been a lot of new films for us to watch.
I think,
so it's kind of like these have been a substitute. So I just wondered what you guys thought on whether games now, especially in the past couple of years, like the advent of Uncharted and whatnot, whether it's a bad thing that they're becoming too cinematic. Because there's an argument there whether going too much like a film is actually detracting from the gameplay itself.
I think it's kind of absurd to say that games can be too cinematic. I don't know whether it's because we come from a film background, but for me, the main difference between watching a film and playing a game is control.
Yeah.
So as much as I love watching a film, I have no control over what I'm watching. The filmmaker has made it. It's the way it is. I just have to watch it for what it's worth. With a game, I have control over the character. My decisions impact my storyline. And I just feel like having control over the world that you're in is something that you can't get from cinema. So I think having cinematic elements that you can control is a wonderful thing. And I think with games like The Last of Us, you make one slight wrong move, and you're dead, and the game's over, sort of thing. So I think having control is such a major part of the gaming experience that you can't get anywhere else, especially not in films. So I don't know, I've always found that argument to be quite naff, to be honest.
I'm exactly with you. I think that the fact that you've got control over the characters, like, for example, Joel and Last of Us, but you're both caring for Joel, and also you are Joel yourself as well. You are part of the narrative in that regard. So you do feel a connect with the characters when you've got to do really awful things in games. You're thinking, I am doing this to certain characters, you know? Like there's points in Tsushima, I don't want to spoil it, but there's a storyline to do with Lady Masako, which had one of the most like surprising, shocking, and like emotionally, you know, brutal moments I've had in the game for a long time. And it was because I was making the character do something I didn't want him to do, but because I was like, I am controlling him, I've got to make this decision. I was like, this has added another layer to the actual story experience, you know, that you kind of having to do the choice that you maybe don't want to, and you are thinking, oh, what would Jin do? What would I do? You know, you're comparing your experiences side by side, and I think, yeah, I don't really understand that whole argument of why being cinematic is bad. And is that, I know it's a fancy term that gets thrown around. Isn't it called ludonarrative dissonance? Isn't that the thing? Yeah, that's the idea that like the game you play is not controlled by you. Like you are just literally pressing play and the story is playing in front of you. And I just don't really agree with that. Like Last of Us Part 2, Part 1, for example, they are very cinematic stories, and yet they're both so enthralling that I just didn't care.
I think it's the same for the Telltale games, like the Walking Dead.
Yes.
It's all
Batman, yeah.
it's all narrative based. Like there's very little action in those films, in those games. Sorry, they're very cinematic, but your decisions mean everything, and it tailors your experience. And I feel like, why not merge the two? I don't know. I just don't see why you think that's a bad thing. You know?
Yep.
You see, I'd personally compare like the kind of new approach in the last like 5 or 6 years with like the cinematic kind of style in games to kind of like a Netflix series, and kind of like something like Daredevil, like that. The story that you get in those kind of seasons wouldn't work in like a standard MCU film.
That's true.
But because you've got the freedom of expression with a video game, which can be 60 to 70 hours long, like Red Dead Redemption 2, for example, which took me like playing it every day after I finished work for like a solid month to complete the main story.
Yeah.
You've got that expression to tell these wider stories. And I think, again, maybe it's just because we come from like a film background, I enjoy having that sense of like I'm inside like the film of my dreams kind of thing.
Yep.
Like playing Red Dead, like, yeah, I'm in a Sergio Leone Western now, and I get to control how this goes. If I want to wear the damn poncho and have a gold gun, I can do that.
Yeah.
I'm the Clint Eastwood of this story. But then there's the argument on the other side as well, like from the gameplay point of view. I think when this thing kind of started initially, a lot of it was kind of based a lot in cutscenes and a lot in kind of quick time events.
Yeah, I get that.
I think over the last couple of years, it's not been as bad. I think you've got things like the Uncharted series, especially like the fourth one, I think in particular, that's took like the kind of Indiana Jones film approach, because the fourth one to me feels a lot like The Last Crusade, because you play as like young Nathan Drake and you see how he kind of evolved into the character he is now. And I like having that kind of approach to the game. It feels like I'm experiencing something I wouldn't get in the film medium. It's an interesting argument, but for me personally, I prefer having that longevity to the experience.
I think it also, as well, I think it does a disservice to the people who write video game stories.
Yeah, of course.
To be able to write a story that is 30 hours long and make it as good as it is, you know? Like, writing a story over 2 hours is difficult. Writing a story over 30 hours and making it good is even more difficult. And I think so many games have got amazing stories. Like, I've not played it yet, but Uncharted 4 I've heard is incredible. Red Dead 2 story is amazing, and both those games are well long. And it's just, you know, really, you've got to appreciate how much time and craft goes into making a good video game story.
The thing, like, as well with writing a game, we kind of see it from an outside perspective of them writing the game is purely just the main narrative beats.
Yeah.
But you've got to think, when they're writing that, they're not also just writing the main story, they're also writing in the side content, all the lines of NPC dialogue that affect everything else as well, and how that weaves into the overall experience.
Yeah.
Because even though, like, when we've played, like, Tsushima, for example, we've done the side quests in our own kind of order and at will, I imagine that they've wrote it in mind, maybe we should go to a certain character first and then go to another character, and there is a kind of like balance to the story.
I definitely got that vibe when I think I only finished 2 of them before I got to the final couple of missions.
Yeah.
And I definitely felt like, oh, I wish I knew what was going on in this person's story before I got to the end. Like, for example, Yuna in Tsushima, I didn't touch her side story until after I finished the whole game. And it was like, so I felt like her role in the final mission wasn't as strong for me personally as it probably would have been had I seen her whole story, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say if you are playing Tsushima, play the side quests before you play the final missions, because it will affect your overall enjoyment of the last few missions.
I think touching that as well on the last question, I know like, when I screened the questions to you earlier, it's a bit of a hefty one. But with these, like, us using these games as like a substitute for films, and again, with us all being inside for the last couple of months, it is a coping mechanism in a way, because we're trying to experience things we're not getting at the moment. And I just wondered how you guys in particular were using games as like a coping mechanism for everything that's going on, whether it's good or bad things.
I think what I touched on earlier about having control, I think in the world that we're living in at the minute, we just don't have that level of control in our lives. You know, we have to kind of obey by the rules so that, you know, we can get out of this shitstorm as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So I think going into a cinematic kind of experience through gaming and having that control and being the kind of controller of another world that isn't bound by these rules, I think for me that's where I get my escapism from the world that we're living in right now.
I think I'm slightly different in that I think I've probably played more games than I expected to play during lockdown. I thought I'd watch many more films, but I think because of having no cinema, like the desire to watch films hasn't been there for me as much as it used to.
Yeah.
But then so I've played much more games, and then with things like playing games like Warzone, it has, as lame as it sounds, it's really, really made really strong connections with friends. Like it's made me It's made me talk to people more. Like I've got friends up here that I don't see that much in, like live near me, and I've been with them on Warzone for a while. It's been really fun to talk to them in a different manner than I usually would, and then with you guys as well. It's been so helpful to go to somewhere that it does feel normal. We've got like that common ground of we can just play a game together, and it's absolutely revolutionized, the PS4 over the last few months, because it has been there as like, it's like been my rock, But yeah, it's one of those things where I think COD got so lucky that lockdown happened bizarrely, because Warzone took off as a result of it. But then if there was a Warzone, we probably would have been on Apex or Fortnite or something as well. It's just been, the gaming community has kind of come together really nicely over lockdown, because we have been able to kind of stay online more and play more games and do more things on it, which we wouldn't have done before. Like, I'm certain I wouldn't have bought Tsushima had I been out of lockdown, because it just didn't strike as my kind of game. But here I am, having written a massive review of it.
It is a mammoth review.
I think gaming is the only medium that hasn't really been that affected by lockdown. Obviously, film production has stopped entirely. Music has been affected insofar as we can't go to live events and that sort of thing. Whereas gaming, you're in the comfort of your own house, in your own solitude, and you can play digitally and virtually with people online, and that kind of keeps your social cues on track. And I just think it's the only medium right now that's probably the most viable and the most effective. And I think it's really kind of benefited from that as well, as you say, not just Warzone, but the medium as a whole.
I'm in like a similar position to Rhys. Like, I've got friends that live up here, but I don't really see them that much anyway prior to lockdown, because we're all doing different things. Like, some of them are at like uni in different parts of the country and whatnot. So having Warzone specifically for me to restore a bit of balance, where I can come on at a certain time of day and just be like, hey guys, what's going on? Bit of normality to everything. It's been a really beautiful thing. And I think, like, in particular, I know we're like, in our experience, I think over the last couple of months, I know we've all been like in the JumpCut team for like a couple of years or so, but I think in the last like 4 or 5 months, we've all become like much better friends.
Oh, without a doubt, mate. Without a doubt.
Because of like having Warzone to go to.
I think I don't want to throw someone under the bus, but Murphy, who we all love, who's part of the JumpCut team, he's expressed a few times, he struggles with confidence or whatever, and I think what Warzone has done is kind of brought him out of his shell, and he's made really good friends with us, and we've become really good friends with him. I think that's just one kind of case study of how gaming can really help people.
Yeah.
I think it has such a hard time as a medium. People blame it for things that happen in the real world. We don't give it enough credit for being a distraction to the real world, and I think it can have such a massive benefit on so many people. I think we should really give it credit for that.
100%.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's a weird one as well, because I think from an outside point of view, like, obviously people see all the JumpCut kind of team tweet each other and whatnot, but we don't all talk to each other as often as people might think. I know we have kind of like the team chat that we contribute to every now and again, but I think obviously people can't always be part of that because they're busy. So Murphy, obviously, he's been one of like kind of the OG JumpCutters in the last like 5 years from its inception, and he's only just come back recently in the last year or so, and I'd never really talked to him. Obviously, I interact with him on Twitter, and then it's only because of this magical thing with Warzone, like we talk to each other on a daily basis now. It's such a incredible thing that it's done, and again, I don't know whether if this COVID thing hadn't had happened, whether Warzone would have had that same effect. But
I don't think so, personally.
Yeah.
I think it would have been a success, but I don't think it would have been as massive a success story as it has been.
Yeah, I think it's definitely been kind of the bridge, even for people that don't necessarily play games all the time, just as kind of like a social hub, just to kind of just chill out, because it's got to the point now where us guys play it, and we're not necessarily just playing it. I know we like to play it competitively and whatnot, but I think it's got to the point now recently where we literally just come on it a couple hours at night just to catch up.
Yeah,
exactly.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's purely for the social aspect now, which I think's like a really beautiful thing.
That got well corny, boys. I'll be honest.
It did.
Not gonna lie, boys. I'm a bit teary-eyed.
First episode of PLAYCast, and I brought the tears.
Oh yeah,
That's all we need.
so emotional.
But I think that's a good point as any to wrap it up before we all start crying.
Yeah.
But before we go,
and jump on Warzone.
I jump on Warzone. It's true, guys. Every night there's a text that comes through, be it me, be it Murphy, be it Corey. It's like, guys, it's 11 p.m. I'm jumping on.
It's Warzone time.
It's Warzone time. But before we go, I've got a little bit of admin to do. So, with being a Patreon subscriber, you get a beautiful shout out, not just on JumpCast, the main series now, but also on PLAYCast, which I think is pretty cool.
Even better, I think, than JumpCast. No offense, JumpCast.
Oh, shit. Shots fired! Shots fired!
So, I'd like to thank Chris Wilson, Let There Be Light Productions, Zoe Baines, Dal Griffiths, Sam Luck, Ola Smith, Peter Hodgkins, Nicole Pott, Andy Meakin, Fabiana Rosas, and Hamish Calvert. Your support is very much appreciated, and if you'd like to have your voice read out in my sultry tones, you can become a Patreon subscriber and get access to things such as a certain Spy Kids podcast, hosted by your own Rhys Rubberger.
That is me. And that episode is really fun. I really enjoyed doing that.
Super spicy.
And we've also, as a kind of segue with someone else in the room right now, the first episode was about Inception, which Corey Hughes starred in, and we've had some glowing reviews of the Inception episode. So if you want to have some really, really fun, good content, and actually interesting content about those two films, please go ahead and get on Patreon and listen to the Inception and Spy Kids podcasts.
The Inception one is a belter. I've never heard so much about Greek mythology in 40 minutes.
Sorry.
Incredible.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
And with supporting us on Patreon too, you also get a free copy of every issue of JumpCut magazine every time it's released, and that's at any tier. And we have our second issue coming out in September, which we're all very excited to release.
All the donations that we get and all the Patreon subscribers that we get help us fund writers to get paid opportunities to write, to have their words paid for and commissioned, which is so important in the digital era that we're in with freelance journalism at the minute. So many people want to earn a bit of income for their words, and rightfully so. And thanks to your help and your generosity, we've finally been able to do that. So thank you.
Don't make me cry again, Corey. But with that being said, before we go, other than obviously the admin of our beautiful JumpCut Online, is there anything else you'd like to plug, guys?
Corey, you first, mate.
No, just keep an eye out on everything JumpCut related. We're doing some amazing things, amazing features going out every month, as well as reviews and interviews and stuff. So we really appreciate your support, and just keep it going. Thank you.
And I mentioned it earlier, but if you could go to jumpcutonline.co.uk and have a look at my new Ghost of Tsushima review, that would be pretty nice. I spent a long time on it, and it's very long, so maybe have a cuppa next year to keep you going through it.
It is an absolute mammoth.
I really enjoyed writing it, and it's also a review that doesn't spoil any story beats or anything.
Oh,
I've kept it as helpful as I could without spoiling any of the major moments in the game, because there are so many cool moments that you need to experience for yourselves in Ghost of Tsushima. But that's it. Yeah, just that review of Tsushima would be lovely. Thank you very much.
It's an absolute banger. I really, really enjoyed reading it. I can't say enough.
Thanks, man.
Such a good review. But with that being said, this has been the first episode of PLAYCast, and if you want to catch more of it, make sure to follow at JumpCast_ on Twitter, and keep up with the team at JumpCut Play at JumpCut_play. Thank you for tuning in, everybody, and we will see you again very soon. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Bye.